My father pushed my 10-year-old daughter from her chair at the Christmas dinner table. That place is reserved for my real granddaughter. Get out. She tumbled to the floor before 14 family members. Not one person stirred. I didn't shout. I didn't weep. I spoke just 4 words. My mother's wine glass slipped and shattered. My father's face drained of color. 3 days afterward, a certified letter arrived. His hands trembled uncontrollably as he opened it. My name is Dana. I'm 34, a single mother and an ER nurse. This is the story of how I quit pleading for a place at their table and began creating my own. If you're viewing this, please subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Now let me carry you back to the morning of December 25th, the day everything shifted forever. Most mornings unfolded identically. 5:30 a.m. inside a cottage barely larger than a 2-car garage, nestled behind my parents' home at 14 Burwood Lane. Barefoot on icy tile, I'd pour coffee into the sole unchipped mug while the baseboard heater clicked and grumbled as though December in Connecticut personally insulted it. Lily remained asleep in the adjoining room, 10 years old that winter. Her brown hair spilled across the pillow. One arm encircled a stuffed bear worn so thin you could trace the stitches through its worn stomach. She'd clung to that bear since the day I brought her home from foster care, at 3 years old, wordless, clutching my finger as if it were the only steady thing left on earth. 7 years on, she had found her voice. She sketched endlessly. Birds, cottages, families gathered around dinner tables. She devoured chapter books 2 grades beyond her age. And every few weeks, often at bedtime, she'd gaze up and ask the same quiet question. "Mommy, am I really yours forever?" Each time, I answered the same way. For 7 years, I'd sent my father $1,100 monthly for that cottage. Zelle transfer, first of every month without fail. My phone held 84 screenshots, every transaction timestamped. I saved them because I'm an ER nurse, and ER nurses record everything. We chart, we document, we timestamp. My father insisted no lease was needed. "We're family," he said. "Paper isn't necessary." I trusted him for 7 full years. Hold that figure in mind, 84 payments, because it becomes crucial later. Christmas at the Thornton house was less celebration than carefully staged performance. My father orchestrated it like the bank branch manager he'd been for 3 decades, never quite switching off the role. Each year, the long oak table accommodated 14 to 16, set with the fine china, cloth napkins pleated into elaborate shapes, an unspoken yet ironclad seating arrangement. Richard Thornton presided at the head, my mother Vivian sat to his left, my elder sister Brooke to his right, her daughter Harper tucked beside her, close enough for Grandpa to slice her meat and boast about her talents to the room. Harper, 8 years old, joined the adults. Lily and I were placed at the distant end, near the kitchen door, where cold drafts slipped in and the dishwasher hummed. Every single year. If you're wondering whether the arrangement happened by chance, it never did. Nothing my father arranged ever did. 2 days prior, my mother phoned, not to inquire about Lily's wished-for gift, not to see if last year's dress still fit. She called to caution, "Don't let Lily wear anything too bright. Brooke just got Harper a new dress, and you know how Harper sulks when she isn't the star." I clenched my teeth and replied, "Of course, Mom." That evening, I chose a plain red sweater for Lily. She studied her reflection in the bathroom mirror, smoothed the fabric with both hands, and asked softly, "Mommy, can I sit beside Harper at the big table this year?" I promised I'd try. I should have recognized the truth then. The seating plan wasn't about furniture, it was about who mattered. And in my father's home, my daughter had never mattered. Christmas Day, 4:17 p.m. The sky turned the shade of damp concrete. A light snow drifted down, the sort that refuses to settle yet turns the world into a delicate enclosed snow globe. Lily clutched a rolled sheet of paper in both hands, carrying it forward like a candle in a solemn procession. She'd labored over it for 2 weeks, a painting on heavy watercolor paper called Our Family Christmas. Every relative rendered in vivid gouache: Grandpa, Grandma, Aunt Brooke, Harper, even Great-Grandma June in her wheelchair. All smiling, all sitting together at one table. She hoped to present it to my father before the meal began. He greeted us at the front door. The pine wreath released a crisp scent. Porch light gilded the falling snow. My father glanced at Lily, then looked straight past her, the way one overlooks a familiar object grown invisible. A brief nod, no embrace, no "Merry Christmas, Lily." Moments later, Harper dashed up behind him, and his entire demeanor transformed. He dropped to a crouch, arms open wide. "There's my princess. Look at that beautiful dress." He held her tightly. I counted 10 full seconds. Indoors, Brooke adjusted place cards along the oak table. I searched for Lily's name. It was absent. The main table held 14 places. Against the rear wall, near the kitchen entrance, a folding metal card table, the kind used for card games, had been opened, laid with 1 plate, 1 fork, a paper napkin, and a single chair. Harper, 8 years old, sat among the adults. Lily, 10, was assigned solitude at that small table behind the kitchen door. In the hallway, I leaned close to my mother. "Mom, Lily can join the main table, can't she? She's 10. Vivian kept her eyes averted. "Don't turn this into an issue, Dana." Dinner was midway through when the moment arrived. I'd been observing Lily through the kitchen doorway, alone at her small table, eating in silence, her rolled painting resting beside her untouched plate because the perfect instant to offer it hadn't come. She kept stealing glances toward the main table, where Harper giggled as my father carved extra ham for her plate and recounted tales of her ballet performance. Then Lily arose. She gathered her painting, walked steadily to the main table, and slipped into the one vacant seat, the place intended for my cousin Jeff, who had arrived. It stood right beside me. She settled into the chair, unrolled her painting across the tablecloth, and offered a small smile. "I made this for everyone," she said softly. My father lowered his carving knife. The room didn't simply fall silent. It became airless, sealed tight. 14 forks froze mid-motion. He rose, circled the table, and loomed above my daughter. "That seat is for family," he stated, tone flat and procedural, the way he once recited bank procedures to nervous tellers. "She is family, Dad," I answered. He ignored me. His gaze stayed fixed on Lily. "That seat is for my real granddaughter. Get out." His hand clamped onto the shoulder of her red sweater. He pulled. Not a strike, not a shove, but a swift, intentional yank, the motion you'd use to lift a disobedient pet from furniture. Lily's small frame twisted. Chair legs screeched against wood. She tumbled sideways and struck the hardwood floor with a dull thud that still echoes inside me. The painting fluttered down face first beside her. 5 seconds of absolute stillness. I counted them the same way I count the interval between impact and cardiac arrest in the trauma bay. 5 deliberate seconds. 14 adults in the room. Not one rose. Vivian stared at her plate. Brooke sliced another piece of ham. Lily didn't cry out. She looked up at me from the floor, eyes enormous, and breathed a single word. "Mommy." I don't recall standing. I only remember already being on my feet, the napkin sliding from my lap, the scrape of my chair, the forward motion. I didn't yell. I didn't lunge. 7 years in the ER teach you composure when chaos erupts. Hands steady, voice low, action precise. I knelt, slipped my arms beneath her, and lifted. She trembled. Quick, shallow shivers, the kind a child makes when shock registers in the body before the mind catches up. I cradled her against me, one palm cupping the back of her head. Then I met my father's eyes. He remained standing, hand still suspended halfway, fingers parted as though the fabric of her sweater lingered in his grasp. I spoke 4 words. "We are done here." Behind me came a sharp crack, glass meeting wood. My mother's wine glass had fallen from her fingers. Crimson spread across the white cloth like spilled ink. My father's face paled to match the snow beyond the windows. I retrieved Lily's painting from the floor, collected our coats from the hallway closet, and walked out the front door. No one followed. The snow had thickened. Flakes clung to Lily's lashes. She pressed her face into my neck and whispered, "Are we going home?" "We're going to our home," I told her. In the car, engine running, heater roaring, I lifted the back of her sweater. A red welt, already bruising, striped her lower back where she'd caught the chair leg on the way down. I took 3 clear photos. Timestamp, December 25th, 7:42 p.m. Then I sat in our cottage driveway for 10 full minutes, engine idling, snow gathering on the glass, and made 3 decisions that would alter the course of everything. By 9 p.m., my phone had turned into a barrage aimed squarely at me. 11 missed calls, 23 text messages. I read each one and captured screenshots of every single message, because when the revisionism begins, you preserve evidence before anyone insists the event never occurred. My mother: "You ruined Christmas. Your father barely touched her. She's exaggerating, and so are you." Brooke: "Lily slipped off the chair on her own. I watched the whole thing. Stop turning it into drama." Aunt Linda: "Richard didn't mean it that way. He's under tremendous stress. Come back tomorrow and apologize. Be the bigger person." 23 messages. 0 asked whether Lily was all right. I placed the phone face down on the kitchen counter and drew Lily a bath. I perched on the closed toilet seat, reading her 2 chapters as steam rose and lavender soap scented the air. She stayed quiet, not the frightened silence from the floor, but a thoughtful one. At bedtime, she gazed up from her pillow and asked, "Is Grandpa mad because I'm not really his?" I smoothed hair from her forehead. "You are really mine. That's what counts." She drifted off, clutching her threadbare bear in both arms. I moved to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started a Google Doc. Title: Incident Log, Thornton Family. I worked until 1 a.m., recording every remembered slight from the past 7 years. Dates, exact words, witnesses present, remarks directed at Lily, comments made about her when she was out of earshot. 7 years of incidents, sorted chronologically. I answered none of the messages that night. The screenshots were sufficient. December 26th, 8:14 a.m. Lily still slept when the pounding began. Not a courteous knock, but the flat of a palm slamming the cottage door hard enough to shake the chain. I knew who stood there before I checked the peephole. My father waited on the step in his wool overcoat, breath fogging the frigid air. No dish of food, no remorseful expression. I cracked the door 6 inches and positioned my body to block the hallway leading to Lily's room. He skipped greetings. "You humiliated me in front of my family." His voice carried the same controlled edge he once used on tellers who shorted a drawer, clipped, authoritative, with an undercurrent of fury. "That girl needs to learn her place, and so do you." "Her name is Lily," I said. "She's your granddaughter, and you shoved a child." "She isn't even blood, Dana. She doesn't—" "This conversation is finished. Do not return to this door until you're prepared to apologize to Lily." I shut the door. Deadbolt. Chain. He pounded again, harder. Then his voice filtered through the wood, muffled yet unmistakable, the way urgent pages sound through hospital corridors at 3 a.m. "This is my property. I can come here whenever I want to my own property." I drew my phone, opened voice memos, and held it 6 inches from the door. He continued for 47 seconds. My property, my house, not even blood, ungrateful. I stood motionless, phone steady, counting beats like I count chest compressions in a code. Timestamp, December 26th, 10:14 a.m. He had called it his property. I had the recording. And in the quiet that followed, a question I'd never permitted myself to ask began to take shape. Whose property was it truly? Christmas was not the beginning. It was merely the first time he laid hands on her.
The cruelty had always simmered beneath the surface. It simply wore a softer mask, one you could convince yourself to overlook if you squinted long enough and stayed quiet. Lily's 5th birthday came and went unmarked by my father, not overlooked in the absent-minded way of someone swamped with obligations, overlooked in the deliberate way of something that never made it onto his mental list. 6 months later, Harper turned 5. He rented a bounce house, hired a snow cone machine, and uploaded 11 photos to Facebook with the caption, "My little princess turns 5." Brooke received $3,000 annually from our grandmother's education trust, money Grandma June established for every great-grandchild. I had assumed Lily was included. I never verified it. That assumption would prove costly later. When I adopted Lily at 27, single, newly graduated from nursing school, carrying $40,000 in student loans and living in a one-bedroom apartment that perpetually smelled of garlic from the restaurant downstairs, my family's response fell far short of welcoming. My father, "At least marry someone first." Brooke, "You're going to ruin your life." My mother, softer but sharper, "What if she has problems?" She meant Lily. The year Lily turned 6 at Thanksgiving, right between passing the cranberry sauce and the green beans, my mother remarked in front of her, "Well, she doesn't look like us, does she?" I said nothing. I sliced my turkey in silence because I lived in my father's cottage, paid my father's rent, and feared that any protest might cost Lily the only extended family she had ever known. 7 years, 84 rent payments. I believed I was purchasing Lily a permanent place in this family. You cannot buy inclusion at a table where you were never invited. You only pay for the right to be endured. And while I kept writing those checks, I never paused to confirm who actually held the title to the house. December 27th, I phoned Grandma June. She resided at Maplewood Assisted Living, 40 minutes east, in a modest room furnished with a handmade quilt and 30 years of school portraits lining the walls. 82 years old, hands gnarled by arthritis, mind still razor-sharp, carrying the quiet command of a woman who had managed third-grade classrooms for 3 decades without ever needing to raise her voice. The children simply knew she meant what she said. I told her everything. The card table, the empty place at the main table, the chair, the fall, the sound her body made against the floor. She listened without interruption, then silence, not bewildered silence, but the measured pause of someone counting to 10 to ensure her next words land exactly where intended. "So he pushed Lily onto the floor." "Yes, ma'am." Another silence. 10 seconds. I counted. "Dana, I need to ask you something. Are you and Lily still in the cottage behind the house?" "Yes." "And who told you that house belongs to your father?" My stomach lurched. "He did. Everyone did. He inherited it, didn't he?" The sound Grandma June made wasn't laughter. It was the faint echo of one, dry and weary. "I never transferred the deed, sweetheart. That house is still mine. Every brick, every shingle, every square foot of the cottage your father has been charging you rent to live in. He's occupied my property for 15 years and convinced everyone, including you, it's his." I sank onto the edge of my bed. The room tilted the way it does when a patient you thought was stable codes without warning. "I'm calling Marcus," she said. "You remember Marcus Webb from your college days? He manages my estate." I did. Trust and estate attorney. Reserved, meticulous, the sort who annotates footnotes and never misses a comma. "Grandma, what are you—" Nobody puts hands on my great-grandbaby and continues living in my house. Nobody, she repeated, and ended the call. The question that had been taking shape since my father's voice carried through the cottage door, "This is my property," now had its answer. Marcus Webb rang the next morning at 8:15. No preamble, no niceties. Attorneys who serve determined 82-year-olds don't indulge in chit-chat. "I pulled the county land records last night. 14 Burwood Lane. The deed remains in the name of June A. Whitmore. No transfer, no quitclaim, no life estate, nothing. Your father holds zero legal title to that property." I stared at the water stain above the kitchen sink, a comma-shaped mark I'd intended to paint over for 3 years. "He's been a tenant of sufferance, an occupant without a lease, and because he represented the cottage as his own and collected rent from you, we have a clear case of unjust enrichment. 7 years at $1,100 a month. That totals $102,400. I set my coffee mug down. My hand trembled too much to hold it steady. $102,400. I recalculated it in my head differently. 7 years of overnight shifts, holidays worked so Lily could have birthday gifts, Thanksgivings spent on doubles because rent was due the 1st, and my account hovered at $800. All of it handed to a man who owned none of the walls I slept under. 10 minutes later, Marcus emailed the scanned deed. I opened it on my phone. There it was, recorded at the county clerk's office in crisp black ink. June A. Whitmore. Permanent. Undeniable. I saved copies in 3 separate locations. I'm an ER nurse, we document everything, and I was only beginning. The deed was the first fracture. The trust became the chasm. Marcus called again that afternoon. He had obtained the bank statements for Grandma June's Education Trust, a revocable trust established in 2016 with $120,000, created for the educational benefit of all her great-grandchildren. She had appointed my father trustee because, in her words, he was good with money. I heard pages turning on his end. Original principal $120,000. Current balance $11,340. I pulled the phone from my ear and stared at it the way you stare at a monitor spitting out impossible vitals. Where did the rest go? 14 withdrawals between 2019 and 2024, each coded as educational expenses. Recipient, Harper Torton Hayes. He paused. "Dana, Harper attends public school. There is no tuition." $18,660 withdrawn in Brooke's daughter's name for an education that cost nothing. I thought of Brooke's kitchen remodel 2 years earlier, the Cancun vacation, the designer handbags that appeared in her Instagram stories captioned, "Treat yourself," and "Because I deserve it."
"And Lily?" I asked. "There isn't a single withdrawal in her name." Another pause. This one stretched longer, heavier. "In fact, Lily isn't listed as a beneficiary at all. The trust document reads, 'All great-grandchildren.' Your father, as trustee, had the administrative responsibility to add her. He chose not to." $18,660 diverted, and my daughter's name appeared nowhere in the records, not because she was ineligible, but because my father had deliberately excluded her. I closed my eyes and drew a slow breath. For the first time since Christmas, the heat of anger gave way to something colder, clearer, more precise. Marcus arranged a 3-way call that evening, me, him, and Grandma June. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, Lily's bedroom door shut. Down the hall, her audiobook played softly, a chapter book about a girl who befriends a dragon, the sort of tale where everything eventually turns out right. Marcus reviewed the facts methodically, the way he always did, calm, clinical, like dictating a lab report. The deed, the rent payments, the trust, the 14 withdrawals, the absent beneficiary. When he finished, Grandma June fell silent. I watched the microwave clock. 15 seconds. I counted, same as always. In the ER, you learn silence means one of two things: a patient crashing or a patient gathering strength to fight. Then she spoke, her voice so steady it could have etched frost on glass. Marcus, I need 3 things completed before New Year's. First, freeze the trust immediately. No further withdrawals by anyone. Second, demand a complete accounting from Richard. Every dollar, every receipt. He has 30 days. Third, prepare an amendment. Effective immediately, the sole beneficiary of the education trust is Lily Marie Thornton. Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied. And the house? Her tone didn't waver. It honed itself sharper. They've occupied my property for 15 years without paying me a cent, while he charged my granddaughter rent. Issue them a proper 30-day notice to vacate. Certified mail. I started to speak. Grandma, are you sure? Mom will... Your mother watched a grown man shove a child to the floor, Dana, and then she picked up her fork. I'm sure. The line clicked dead. Clean, final. The same decisive sound she used closing her classroom door after the last student left. The trust was locked. The clock was running, and I hadn't raised my voice once. December 29th, 4 a.m. Lily slept. The cottage was still. The kitchen table had become my command center. I'm a triage nurse. When trauma rolls through the doors, you don't panic. You prioritize. You identify what's hemorrhaging, what's fractured, what can wait, what cannot. Then you address each item methodically until the board is clear. I applied the same protocol to my father. Folder 1. Manila, hard copies. 3 time-stamped photos of Lily's bruise. The printed medical report from Dr. Patel, Lily's pediatrician, who documented on December 26th a contusion to the lower back consistent with blunt force against a furniture edge. Folder 2, digital, cloud-backed. The Google Doc incident log, now 23 pages spanning 7 years. 23 screenshot text messages from Christmas night, each time-stamped and attributed. The 47-second voice memo of my father at the door. 84 Zelle payment confirmations totaling $92,400, the scanned county deed, the trust statements detailing 14 unauthorized withdrawals. 7 categories, 7 years of accumulated silence now cataloged as evidence. At 9 a.m., I called Dr. Amara Singh's office, a pediatric counselor in Glastonbury, specializing in children navigating family upheaval. First available, January 2nd. By noon, Marcus emailed 3 drafts: the 30-day notice to vacate, the demand for trust accounting, the amendment designating Lily sole beneficiary, ready for Grandma June's notarized signature. I printed them, collated them, clipped them neatly. Then I leaned back in the chair and registered a sensation I'd never permitted in that cottage before. I was no longer asking permission, no longer measuring words against the price of rent, no longer calibrating my volume to protect someone's ego. For the first time in 7 years, I was simply acting. It felt like drawing air after too long underwater. December 29th. The call I should have placed 5 days ago, or truthfully, years ago. But that's another reckoning for another time. Marcus had explained it the night before. An adult had used physical force on a 10-year-old, causing her to fall and sustain visible injury. Under Connecticut law, that crossed the threshold for a mandatory report to the Department of Children and Families. I could file it as the parent. At 10 a.m., I sat at the kitchen table, hotline number written on a sticky note. Across the cottage, Lily sat cross-legged on the living room rug, painting a snow owl with watercolors. From my seat, I could see the back of her head, brown hair still sleep-tousled, bent in quiet focus. I dialed. My hand trembled, not from the dread, but from the sheer mass of 7 years pressing against a 6-ounce phone. Reporting your own father to Child Protective Services isn't covered in nursing textbooks. No one prepares you for it anywhere. The intake worker listened patiently. I provided dates, descriptions, Dr. Patel's reference number report. I detailed the bruise, the chair, and the 14 adults who remained seated. That afternoon, I emailed a written follow-up statement with the photos attached. Case opened. Confirmation number noted. Investigation window 30 to 45 days. A caseworker would contact Richard Thornton for an interview. I set the phone down and looked across at Lily. She held her paintbrush to the light, studying the color. She didn't know I'd made the call. She didn't need to. That was my role. To make the hard calls she couldn't, so she could keep painting snow owls in the warmth and safety of our home. If you've ever gripped a phone knowing you should have dialed years ago, you know exactly what that moment extracted from you. And this story is nowhere near finished. What came next is the part I still struggle to believe myself. If you're still with me, please subscribe and leave a comment.
What would you have done that Christmas night? Let's keep moving forward. New Year's Eve. While most of Connecticut was uncorking champagne and waiting for the ball to drop, Marcus Webb stood at the downtown Hartford post office, holding a crisp white envelope stamped with words poised to unravel my father's carefully constructed world. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. Inside, a formal 30-day notice to vacate, addressed to Richard and Vivian Thornton for the property at 14 Burwood Lane. The language was restrained, almost courteous in its exactness. Property owned by June A. Whitmore. No lease agreement exists between the parties. Occupants are hereby required to vacate the premises within 30 days of receipt. A process server hand-delivered a duplicate copy that same afternoon. Belt and suspenders, Marcus called it. You leave no space for, "I never received it." A separate envelope went out the same day. A demand letter to Richard Thornton, in his capacity as trustee of the Whitmore Education Trust, mandating a complete accounting of all withdrawals within 30 days. The wording was polite, the way a scalpel is polite. Technically courteous, surgically devastating. At 3 p.m., Marcus drove to Maplewood Assisted Living. Grandma June signed the trust amendment at the small table in her room, witnessed by Marcus and notarized by a mobile notary. Sole beneficiary, effective immediately, Lily Marie Thornton. I spent New Year's Eve on the couch with Lily. We shared a bowl of popcorn and watched the televised countdown. She drifted off with her head in my lap at 11:40, 20 minutes shy of midnight. I tucked a blanket around her and listened to distant fireworks popping somewhere down the street. "Is next year going to be better, Mommy?" she'd murmured before sleep took her. I smoothed her hair. "Next year is going to be ours." Somewhere across town, a certified letter waited in my father's mailbox, ticking like a quiet timer. January 2nd. Marcus texted at 10:09 a.m. Return receipt signed. 10:07 a.m. He has it. 13 minutes later, my phone rang. I didn't need to check the screen. I recognized the vibration pattern the way you sense an approaching storm. Low, electric, unavoidable. My father's voice came through at a register I'd never heard from him before. Not the measured bank manager cadence, not the veiled menace from the cottage doorway. This was something fractured, exposed. Feral. "Your grandmother is senile. This is my house. I've lived there 15 years. It is mine. You've turned a confused old woman against her own family, and I will sue every one of you." I let him finish. "You'll need to take that up with Marcus Webb. His number is on the letter." I ended the call. 10:35. Vivian's turn. The crying was already underway when I answered. "How could you do this to us? We're your parents. We took you in when you had nothing. We let you live in the cottage." "You charged me rent for a house that wasn't yours. I have every Zelle receipt." I hung up. 11 o'clock. Brooke. I saw her name flash and let it roll to voicemail. 40 seconds of recorded fury. Lawyers, elder abuse accusations, promises that I would pay dearly. I saved it, filed it, moved forward. That afternoon, Marcus informed me Richard had phoned Grandma June directly and shouted for 4 minutes straight. She waited until he ran out of breath, then answered in the same calm tone she once used to settle a restless third-grade classroom. "I'm 82, Richard. Not stupid. You have 29 days." She disconnected first. The calls failed, so they changed strategy. First week of January, Brooke sent a group text to 23 relatives, cousins I hadn't spoken to since the Obama administration. I know because my cousin Rachel forwarded it to me within the hour, with one line, "Thought you should see this." The message read, "Just wanted everyone to know what's happening. Dana is manipulating Grandma June, who, as many of you know, has been declining mentally. She is trying to steal the family home and turn Grandma against Mom and Dad. Grandma shows signs of dementia and doesn't understand what she's signing. Please call her and talk some sense into her before this goes further. This is breaking Mom's heart." Every sentence a lie, laid flat and pressed smooth, the way you iron a crease to make something look respectable. I screenshotted it, filed it. Then Aunt Linda called. Linda, who had texted me Christmas night, urging me to understand that Richard didn't mean it, to be the bigger person. Her voice was cautious now, probing. "Dana, is it true you're trying to evict your parents from their home?" "It's not their home, Aunt Linda. It's Grandma June's. Richard lied and he pushed Lily." "Richard would never." "I have a recording." Silence. Then, "What?" I sent her the 47-second voice memo, the one containing my property, not even blood, and ungrateful. I said nothing else, just sent it and waited. 3 minutes later, she texted back 2 words. "Oh God." 2 cousins unfriended me on Facebook that week. Great Aunt Patty messaged, "You're tearing this family apart over a chair." I didn't reply. I didn't post. I didn't debate. Brooke had texted 23 people. I sent 1 recording to 1 person. Evidence doesn't need a crowd. It needs the correct ears. January 2nd, the same day my father received the letter and began raging. While he was contacting attorneys and threatening litigation, I sat in a waiting room in Glastonbury, surrounded by outdated magazines and a fish tank that hummed like a white noise machine. Lily was behind the closed door with Dr. Amara Singh. 45 minutes. I occupied a blue vinyl chair, watched a plump orange fish trace endless circles, and tried not to imagine what my daughter might be saying inside. When the door opened, Dr. Amara let Lily choose a sticker from the treasure box in the corner, then stepped into the hallway with me. She was petite, composed, the kind of person who selects each word as though weighing it first. "Lily asked me something today," she said. "She asked if she's real." The floor seemed to shift beneath me. "She told me her grandfather has been saying for years that she's not a real grandchild, not only on Christmas."
She said the other children at family gatherings echoed it. Not real, not blood, not one of us. She's carried that weight far longer than anyone realized. I pressed my back against the hallway wall. The fluorescent light hummed overhead. "She's resilient," Dr. Singh continued, "but she needs the people around her to demonstrate, through consistent actions, not merely words, that she truly belongs." "She will," I said. "I promise." On the drive home, Lily sat in the back seat, absently peeling the edges of her sticker, a purple triceratops. "Dr. Singh told me feelings aren't right or wrong, they just are." "That's true, baby." "Then is it okay that I'm mad at Grandpa?" "It is absolutely okay." She nodded and returned to her sticker. I could shield her from a physical shove. I had. But I hadn't protected her from the words, the slow, steady drip of dismissal over years that taught her to doubt her own reality. That failure lodged in my chest like a cold stone. Right there on Route 17, with the heater humming and the Triceratops sticker half peeled, I vowed it would be the last time I arrived too late. January 15th. The accounting deadline arrived like an alarm in an empty room. Marcus called at 4 p.m. His tone carried the calm flatness of someone who had anticipated precisely this outcome. No response from your father. No accounting, no receipts, no word from any attorney, if he's even retained one. The 30-day window for the trust accounting has expired. I stood in the hospital break room, still in scrubs, chewing a granola bar that tasted like compressed cardboard. Through the window, the parking lot lay under a thin crust of old snow, dull and scarred. What happens now? Under Connecticut statute, a trustee who refuses a proper demand for accounting from the settlor or a beneficiary can be removed by the probate court. I'm filing a petition tomorrow to remove Richard as trustee of the Whitmore Education Trust and requesting a court-ordered audit of every disbursement. I let the words settle. A court-ordered audit. Every withdrawal, every fabricated educational expense, every dollar funneled toward Cancun trips, granite countertops, and designer purses, dragged into daylight under oath. One more thing, Marcus added. Brooke has retained counsel. He called me this morning, off the record, truly off the record, and said her position is extremely weak. He's advised her to settle. I almost smiled. Almost. And the house? The 30-day notice was served December 31st. They have until January 30th to vacate. If they don't, we proceed with eviction proceedings. But Dana, I doubt it will reach that point. Your father is not the sort of man who can tolerate an eviction appearing on public record. His pride won't permit it. I glanced at the break room calendar. Someone had sketched a smiley face on the 30th. 15 days. After 15 years of deception, my father had 15 days remaining. January 18th, 3 days before Grandma June's family meeting and 12 days before the vacate deadline, my mother appeared at the cottage unannounced. No prior call, no text, only the crisp crunch of her sensible shoes on the frozen gravel, followed by a knock. Not the aggressive palm slap my father had used, but something gentler, hesitant, the knock of a woman who had rehearsed her speech in the car. I opened the door. Lily was at school. The cottage smelled of scorched toast and the lavender air freshener Lily had picked from the dollar store. Vivian's eyes were rimmed red, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, the familiar posture she adopted when she wanted her pain and noticed before her request. Dana, please, her voice cracked on the second word. I'm begging you, drop all of this. Your father has having chest pains. He can't sleep. He's barely eating. I'll speak to him about Lily. I promise I will. Just stop the letters. Stop the lawyers. We can resolve this as a family. There it was again. The word family, weighted and weaponized, the way it always had been. Mom, did you speak to him about Lily in the last 7 years? When he referred to her as the kid? When he ignored her birthday? When he left her name out of the trust? He's not bad man, he pushed my daughter on the floor. You watched, then you picked up your fork. She recoiled. The tears flowed faster. Where will we go, Dana? Where will we live? That's no longer my problem to solve. You had 7 years of my rent payments to prepare. She stood there another moment, waiting, I suspect, for the old version of me to yield. That version no longer existed. I closed the door, leaned my weight against it, and pressed both palms flat to the wood. My hands trembled, not from frailty, but from the sheer physical restraint required not to reopen it. January 20th, Maplewood Assisted Living. The second-floor community room, line-of-floor flooring, fluorescent lighting, a long folding table that likely doubled for Tuesday bingo. The air carried the scent of institutional coffee and lemon-scented cleaner. Grandma June had made the calls herself, each one brief, each one identical. I need you at Maplewood at Saturday at 2 p.m. This is not optional. When I entered, Marcus was already present. Navy blazer, laptop bag, the understated competence of someone accustomed to these rooms. He was connecting his laptop to the wall-mounted television that usually displayed weather updates and meal menus. I took a seat 3 chairs from the end and placed my hands on the table. I hadn't brought the manila folder. I didn't need to. This was not my meeting. They arrived singly. Aunt Linda, lips compressed, clutching her purse strap. Cousins Derek and Nate, who had unfriended me on Facebook, yet evidently could not unfriend Grandma June. Brooke in oversized sunglasses, indoors, as though attending a deposition she hadn't prepared for. Richard and Vivian entered last. Richard strode in with the posture he'd perfected over 30 years behind a bank desk, chin high, shoulders squared, the bearing of a man accustomed to others standing before him. Vivian followed, already weeping quietly. Then Grandma June was wheeled to the head of the table. She wore a gray cardigan buttoned to the collar. Her reading glasses dangled from a chain. Before her lay a manila folder identical to the one I kept at home. Richard sat. His face was flushed. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Whatever Dana has told you, sit down." Richard. Her voice sliced the room like a ruler snapped at a desk. "I have a few things to show everyone." Marcus opened his laptop. The television screen came alive with a soft flicker, and the room settled into an absolute hush. This was the moment. Every piece Dana had quietly preserved, every screenshot, every receipt, every time-stamped recording she'd stored instead of firing back, had converged here, in this room. If you're gripping the edge of your seat, drop a like and let me know in the comments. Do you think Richard will finally confront what he's done? Stay with me. Grandma June spoke the way she once taught, deliberately, clearly, with the steady patience of a teacher who knows the lesson will sting. 15 years ago, I permitted Richard and Vivian to live in my home on Burwood Lane. It was an act of generosity, not a transfer of ownership. She gave Marcus a small nod. He distributed a printed page to each person at the table. "This is the current county land record for 14 Burwood Lane," she continued. "The owner, as it has been since 1987, is June A. Whitmore, me." Richard's jaw shifted, but no sound emerged. Color drained from his face the way warmth flees a room when a window opens in January. 10 years ago, Grandma June went on, I established an education trust for all my great-grandchildren, all of them. I appointed Richard trustee because I trusted him. She lingered on the word trusted, the way one hesitates over a hairline fracture in ice. Marcus tapped a key. The screen filled with a bank statement, rows of transactions, dates, amounts, each relevant line highlighted in yellow. These are the withdrawal records from that trust. 14 withdrawals across 5 years. Total $108,660. Every entry labeled as educational expenses for Harper. She turned her gaze to Brooke. The sunglasses were gone now. Brooke's face had taken on the pallor and sheen of skim milk. "Harper attends public school, Brooke. There is no tuition." The room drew a collective breath. Not a gasp, but the simultaneous inhale of 6 people grasping the same truth at once. Grandma June faced the table again. Her voice remained even. "And Lily Thornton, my great-granddaughter, Dana's daughter, was never added as a beneficiary. Not because she was ineligible, because Richard, as trustee, decided she was not family." She allowed the word family to hang there, heavy and pointed, like a nail driven straight through the center of the table. Richard rose abruptly. His chair scraped harshly across the linoleum. I was going to transfer the deed. I managed the trust appropriately. Brooke required funds for Harper's enrichment activities, and I exercised my discretion as trustee." "Show me one tuition receipt," Grandma June interrupted. The room held its breath. Show me one invoice, one enrollment confirmation, one documented expense that justifies $108,660 spent on that child's education. Silence. Richard's mouth opened, closed. He glanced at Brooke. Brooke stared at her hands. "Mom," Brooke began. "Tell her," she said. "It was for activities, tutoring, enrichment programs." Vivian said nothing. She gazed at her folded hands in her lap the same way she had stared at her plate on Christmas night. Some people have only one answer to conflict. Hers was to vanish. Then Aunt Linda spoke. She had sat at the far end in silence since arriving. When her voice emerged, it was low, trembling, not with sorrow, but with the slow burning fury that arrives when you realize you've defended a lie. "Richard, you told me Dana was the problem. You told all of us. You said she was bitter, dramatic, turning Grandma against the family." She lifted the bank statement. "This isn't bitter. This is theft." Derek and Nate stood, without a word, and left. The door closed behind them with a soft, final click. They didn't need to slam it. Marcus spoke next, his tone even and formal, the cadence of a court document. "For the record, Mrs. Whitmore has amended the Education Trust. The sole beneficiary is now Lily Marie Thornton. Mrs. Whitmore has also served a 30-day notice to vacate the property at Burwood Lane. A petition to remove Richard Thornton as trustee has been filed with the probate court." Richard lowered himself back into the chair, movement slow, as though his legs had forgotten their purpose. His hands rested on the table, trembling visibly. The room fell quiet, not peaceful, not settled, simply emptied of pretense, leaving only the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. Grandma June turned to me. Her small, arthritis-knotted hand rested near my arm on the table. "Do you have anything to say, sweetheart?" I hadn't planned to speak. I'd come to witness, to let the documents perform the work that years of silence had demanded. But my grandmother asked, so I stood. The words arrived, not shouted, not rushed, simply clear. I looked at my father. "I spent 7 years trying to earn my daughter a place at your table. That Christmas, she brought you a painting titled Our Family Christmas. She drew every one of you in it. You shoved her off a chair for the effort." I looked at my mother. "I paid you $92,400 in rent for a house you did not own. And when your husband pushed my child to the floor, you picked up your fork." I looked at Brooke. "You took $18,660 intended for my daughter's education. Then you sent a group text to 23 relatives claiming I was the thief." I paused, letting the silence settle. I'm not asking for an apology. I stopped expecting one long ago. I met my father's eyes one final time. I don't negotiate with people who lay hands on children. Lily and I are finished. I sat. Beneath the table, Grandma's hand found mine. She squeezed once, firm, deliberate, the grip of a woman who raised 2 generations and still had strength to spare. No one spoke. The following 10 days unfolded with the patient inevitability of legal machinery turning. January 30th, vacate day. Marcus texted at 6 p.m. "They're out." Neighbor confirmed. Moving truck departed at 4 p.m. Richard and Vivian relocated to a 2-bedroom apartment in Meriden, $1,800 monthly, the first rent payment either of them had written in 15 years. Richard didn't resist. Marcus had been correct. Richard Thornton had spent a lifetime constructing an image. An eviction on public record would have shattered it like glass under a hammer.
He departed without protest. That was the greatest measure of dignity he'd displayed in months. Second week of February, the probate court approved a petition to remove Richard as trustee. The judge's order spanned 3 pages and included the precise phrase, "failure to fulfill fiduciary duties." Marcus Webb was appointed successor trustee at Grandma June's direction. Trust balance upon transfer,
$11,340, augmented by a $40,000 deposit from Grandma June's personal savings. Lily's education fund now stood at $51,340, her name finally appearing on the first page. Third week of February, the DCF investigation closed. The finding? Indicated. The caseworker's report detailed the physical contact, the resulting bruise, the pediatric medical documentation, and the 14 witnesses who remained seated. Richard was ordered to complete an anger management program. Non-compliance could trigger a restricted contact order. Marcus issued my father a final demand: repayment of $14,200, 12 months of rent, the maximum recoverable under the settlement Grandma June accepted to conclude matters cleanly. Richard had 60 days. The cashier's check arrived in 43. $14,200. It could never restore what those years had taken, but it would secure 6 months of rent in a savings account bearing Lily's name. Brooke resisted longer than my father, yet evidence has no patience for defiance. First week of March, Marcus, as successor trustee, sent Brooke Thornton Hayes a formal demand: repayments of $108,660 in unauthorized trust withdrawals. The letter presented two paths. Option 1, full repayment on a mutually agreed schedule. Option 2, civil litigation filed by the trust for breach of fiduciary duty, naming Richard co-defendant for authorizing the disbursements, and potentially including a fraud referral for mischaracterizing personal expenses as educational costs. Brooke's attorney contacted Marcus within 48 hours. Settlement reached mid-March. $60,000, payable at $2,500 monthly over 24 months. It fell short of the full sum, but Grandma June approved. "I want the money returned for Lily," she told Marcus. "I don't want a war. Wars are costly, and they damage the very things you're fighting to protect." Every installment would flow directly into Lily's education trust. Through Aunt Linda, who had quietly ceased responding to Brooke's messages, I learned Brooke sold her Lexus and bought a used Honda. The summer trip to Turks and Caicos was canceled. Kevin, Brooke's husband, apparently discovered the extent of the withdrawals only when the demand letter arrived. Aunt Linda described his reaction with one word: blindsided. I felt no surge of triumph, I'll be honest. There was no cinematic rush, no villain's downfall thrill. I felt weary. I felt clear. And I felt something akin to relief, the sensation of a bone finally set straight after weeks of bearing weight on it crooked. I told Marcus what I had already told myself. I don't wish Brooke to suffer. I want Lily to receive what was always hers. March 14th. Marcus sent the email on my behalf. One concise paragraph addressed to Richard, Vivian, and Brooke. Clinical as a surgical note. I am requesting no direct contact with me or my daughter Lily until further notice. Any necessary communication must be directed to my attorney, Marcus Webb, at the address and number below. No explanation followed, no catalog of grievances, no softening phrases like "perhaps someday" or "when we're ready." I drew the line and stood behind it. Richard replied by mail. Not through Marcus, not electronically, but in a handwritten note slipped into the cottage mailbox. I recognized the sharp slant from the birthday cards he occasionally remembered to send. 4 lines. "You destroyed this family. I hope you're proud of yourself. Your mother cries every night. This isn't over." I read it once, folded it, filed it in the manila folder, and did not answer. In April, Vivian mailed Lily a birthday card, pink envelope. Inside, 3 words in her familiar looping cursive: "Love, Grandma V." No reference to Christmas, no mention of the floor, no acknowledgement of anything that demanded reckoning. I held the card a long time, perched on the edge of my bed after Lily slept. Part of me, the part that had spent 7 years convincing itself any thread of connection was preferable to none, wanted to pass it along. Instead, I placed it in a drawer. Not forever, just not yet. No contact was never intended as punishment, let me be clear. It was the first boundary I had ever established and actually maintained. It wasn't a wall erected in rage. It was a door closed gently, locked with a key I chose not to surrender. Like the oxygen mask on an airplane, secure your own first so you can breathe long enough to assist the person beside you. May in Connecticut carries the scent of thawing earth, fresh mown grass, and the delicate sweetness of apple blossoms unfurling along the fences on Beerwood Lane. We moseyed into the main house on the first Saturday of the month. Grandma June insisted. "It's your home now," she said when I hesitated. "It always should have been." Marcus handled the deed transfer, a gift deed from June Whitmore to Dana Thornton. Clean, legal, irrevocable. After 15 years of my father declaring it his, the house would belong to someone who never pretended ownership she did not possess. Lily selected the upstairs bedroom with the window facing the backyard. She stood in the doorway for a full minute, simply looking. The room was 3 times the size of her cottage space. Sunlight streamed through the glass, painting wide golden bands across the hardwood. "This is mine," she said. "This is yours." She hung one item on the wall that first day, the painting. Our Family Christmas, the watercolor from that night. Edges softened where it had struck the floor, one corner faintly creased from the cold walk to the car. She smoothed it carefully and secured each corner with tape. She continued seeing Dr. Singh every 2 weeks. One late May afternoon, she emerged from her session, sun on her face, backpack slung over one shoulder, and said in the parking lot, "Dr. Singh says I don't have to earn belonging. I just belong." I cried right there, beside the car, in open daylight. The first time since Christmas.
Grandma June came every Sunday. They baked cookies, painted side by side, read stories on the porch while bees hummed through the garden. June called her my girl. Lily called her Great Grandma June. The Education Trust held steady at $51,340, growing by $2,500 each month, enough by the time Lily turned 18 to shape a future entirely of her choosing. One Tuesday evening in June, warm enough to leave the kitchen window open, I stood at the stove, wooden spoon in hand, steam curling from a pot of farfalle, the little bow tie pasta Lily loved because she said they looked like butterflies. The backyard glowed gold. Birch trees caught the last slant of sunlight. A cardinal perched on the fence post, head cocked, watching nothing in particular. Lily burst in from the living room, socks skidding across the hardwood, and wrapped her arms around my waist from behind. She pressed her face into my back. I felt the rise and fall of her breath. "Mommy?" Her voice was small, familiar. "Am I really yours forever?" The question she'd asked 100 times, the one I'd always answered the same way, quick, automatic, a reflex like catching something falling. But this time, I turned the burner low. I set the spoon down. I knelt until our eyes met, her hands clasped in mine, and gave her a different answer. "You are mine, and I am yours. This house is ours, and nobody gets to tell you different." She smiled, not the cautious smile she once wore at my father's table, the one that asked permission to exist. A real smile, wide, unguarded, the kind that begins in the eyes and refuses to stop. I hadn't seen that smile since before Christmas. Later, after she slept, I passed her bedroom. The door stood ajar. Hallway lights spilled across the wall where the painting hung. Our Family Christmas. But it had changed. She had added new figures in bright gouache beside the original Dana and Lily. A small woman in a wheelchair, Grandma June, a lady with dark hair, Dr. Singh, a man in a blue blazer, Marcus. The people who showed up, the people who stayed, the people who never once demanded she prove she was real. No Richard, no Vivian, no Brooke. A smaller family, a truer one. I leaned against the doorframe and listened to my daughter breathing in a room that belonged to her,
in a house that belonged to us, in a life we had built, not from silence, but from the moment I finally shattered it. Family isn't the people who grudgingly offer you a chair at their table. It's the people who would never dream of taking yours away. That's my story, mine and Lily's. If you've ever had to choose between preserving the peace and protecting your child, I hope this gave you permission to choose your child every single time. If this story stayed with you, hit subscribe, leave a heart below, and check the description for the next one, because every kid deserves someone who says, "We are done here," and means it. Thank you for staying until the end.